Well, good morning, and you join me as we leave the primary school. They've got a very, very strange, well, it's not strange, actually, it works all right. They've got a Y-shaped drive. You come in and then you either turn right out this other road, or if you're coming out, you come down the other limb of the Y from the top, and the playground serves as the buffer. So, but the thing is, you can't if you're going in, then you have to follow everyone going in, and absolutely no one can get out until the playground's cleared, the buffer in the playground's cleared the input. And then as soon as the head of the output car sees that the drive is clear, they start going out, and then nothing can then go out until nothing can then go in until all the out cars have cleared themselves. So it's very much a binary. It's a flip-flop. You get like 10 cars in and 10 cars out. They have they've got this weird. Schools are so unsupportive now of parents who don't drop their kids off on time. I mean, it's got to the point where it's like it's gone beyond reasonable. Like for example, the primary school opens at 8:30, and you have to be there by 8:45. And now what that means is that every child in that school, and they all arrive by car. I mean, there's a couple who walk, but most of them arrive by car. Their parents and grandparents have to park up no later than 8:30 and get the child to school. Go on, go. That's it, you're in a Jag. Oh, there's a tractor coming, so if you can't get in front of a tractor with a Jag, what can you do? Actually, I probably shouldn't have gone this way. So I want to get a radiator cap. Anyway, no. Well, no, perhaps I won't. I haven't got enough time. So, anyway, how are you? All right? I hope you're well. Greetings to my usual 30 or so people who watch the videos. I should imagine 29 of those bots that watch every single video and sort of transcribe it and generally feed it into an AI. But if you're a genuine person and you genuinely watch these basically just for the views of Kent, basically, Kent's views are far more interesting than mine, then welcome to a sunny day where it's far more cloudy and it's been far windier than it should be by rights. So I'm going to give you an example today of the sort of bureaucracy that kills this country, because there's a big debate at the moment about whether Britain is going down the plug hole. And I mean, there is no doubt that things are going downhill. They're mainly people, complain that they can't afford a house. They can't get a doctor's appointment. They can't get a dentist's appointment. They can't get through to any government departments. And this is a story of that. I got, personally, before, we start that, I'll just tell you, I think that we are in what the French call fin de regime, end of a regime. And the reason for that is that it comes down to, people say, oh, the NHS isn't working because it's not properly funded, or you can't get through to the DVLA because they're not properly staffed, etc., etc. We are in a period now where the government is increasingly taking control because things are not, they're getting complaints. They want to stay in power. They want to continue to exercise the privilege that's, is afforded to politicians in governing. And so what they're doing is they're firefighting by really just taking control and micromanaging everything. And that includes pretty much everything now. Soon it will be everything. Soon I think that they're going to bring in price controls, and then they'll start telling the factories what fashions to manufacture for next year. And then before you know it, we'll be in full communist, collectivist mode. There won't be any. The private enterprise will be on the fringes of everything, and private enterprise will engage as little as possible with the state, because the only thing that the state does for private enterprise is nick its profits to reallocate it, and something like 40% of all the productive output of the country in terms of selling goods and carrying out services is appropriated by the state and spent by the state. So what's the point of, why engage with the state? If all they're going to do is steal your money. Don't forget the two maxims. The government has no money and the government is not your friend. Okay, just remember those two things. And you can't go far wrong. So but what's gone wrong with government? Well, government becomes more and more socialist over time. As more and more people demand that things be taken over by the state. And we're in a big move towards socialism at the moment because we've just had a Labour government elected, and because people really wanted to send a message to the Conservatives that they'd made a really bad job of the last 14 years, what they did was most people just didn't vote Conservative, and that led to Labour being elected with a massive majority. And the problem that Labour has with that, they don't think it's a problem, but I can tell you it's a problem, is that first of all, they think they're popular. They think they were elected with a massive landslide because of their massive popularity, whereas in fact that's not true. If you look at the amount of votes they got fewer votes than they got last time. It's just the way that the system works. If your opponents are massively unpopular, and you're even just very slightly more popular, then you'll get a big majority. And the other thing is, I think it gives them a mandate for change. They think that because they've got this massive majority, they've certainly got the ability to do stuff, but they haven't, they're using it to do things which are really barking mad, like nationalising railways and nationalising coal and nationalising steel. Old-fashioned Labour policies which are totally discredited and were reversed under Mrs Thatcher, much to the advantage of the country, and the ultimate answer is the free market. So why are we in the Fender regime at the moment? Well, the answer is that we're getting to the end of a monetary experiment that began in 1971, when they floated, every single currency just got floated on its own merits based on the market's confidence in it and the underlying strength of the economy. And Britain does very badly in that sort of competition. We historically have always been a low growth, underperforming economy, and we've not had much in the way of investment because people don't see, you can't complain that people don't invest. Like, for example, I could buy a new OPG machine. There's no doubt it would make me more efficient. It would mean that I wouldn't have to send patients off to the local hospital. It means that I could probably, if I did an OPG on every patient who came in, I could double my turnover, because I would be able to see and explain to patients twice the amount of work that we're currently finding and doing. But I'm not going to do it because I can't see the return for me. I can't see the return. If putting up the profits is I'm just giving more money to the government, my share of the extra profit doesn't justify my share of the extra work. The way I look at it is I'm doing 100% of the extra work, and I'm only getting 50% of the profit. So why, that's barking mad from a business point of view. Why would I do that? So that's why I personally am not investing. And I think that's mirrored in companies up and down the country. They're not investing because the money doesn't add up. The equation doesn't work. And it does come back to the money. There's no point, if the government raises as much as it can, if it puts taxes up until the pips squeak, and then goes on to spend even more and raises the difference by just printing money, which devalues the money that's already in existence and devalues the purchasing power of your pension and your savings and your money that's in your bank account. Everything that you've got that's denominated in pounds will get devalued. And what you're doing is, when the value of your house goes up, what you're doing is you're seeing the pound getting devalued in real time. So, in the past, what the UK has done, because our productivity is so poor and our investment is so unappealing, is that we have devalued the pound. And that's why it was so important that we stayed outside of the euro. For those of you who wonder, why we're an outlier, and certainly most of Europe couldn't understand why we never joined the euro. And the answer is because if we joined the euro, we couldn't devalue our pound. And in the past, whenever our productivity has been so poor that the pound has started to sink on the world stage against all the other world currencies, what we do is we just simply say, all right, then we'll give you more pounds for your dollar, or we'll give you more pounds for your yen or your Deutsche Mark or whatever, your euro. And famously that can be done because only people really who are going abroad or buying goods from abroad really notice the fact that the purchasing power of the pound has been devalued. So, and it's been devalued, and all currencies really now have been devalued a very, very large amount. I think probably in most cases over 90% since Nixon broke the link between, stopped the dollar being gold backed. What happened was a lot of currencies were gold backed, and then in the early part of the 20th century, the English pound ceased to become gold backed, and then after the Second World War, everybody said, well, we'll have a fixed exchange rate with the dollar, and the dollar can be backed by gold. So that was what they called instead of gold backed, that was gold exchange rate. And then in 71, Nixon said, I'm sorry, but the last currency that was guaranteed to be exchanged for a certain amount of gold is no longer going to be guaranteed. And so as a result, all the currencies floated freely. And when I say floated, I mean sank. None of them has floated. If you're going to be pedantic, I would say the only one that has floated and floated up is the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc had a massive advantage because everybody, because they were neutral and non-combatant in the Second World War, and well situated for the to receive goods and valuables, paintings and stuff like that, they ended up with their vault stuffed full of gold bars that belonged to people who were subsequently liquidated or died in the war. And so really they were sat on a pile of wealth really from 39 onwards. And it's carried on, Switzerland now is, and also because of their trade policies, they don't they're very strict on imports. They won't allow any imports, which means that if you go down a Swiss supermarket to buy potatoes, you'll probably find they're the size of cherries, and that's because they're Swiss potatoes, and potatoes don't grow very well in Switzerland. But the problem is that the Swiss won't allow Belgian potatoes or French potatoes to be imported, and so basically you either eat Swiss potatoes or you don't eat potatoes, you know. In fact, the Swiss currency did so well that the rest of the world ganged up on it and said you need to do something stupid to bring it down. So in the end, that's what they did. They ended up buying. They ended up spending a ton of money on other countries' bonds, which are IOUs basically, and buying Apple shares and stuff like that. Anything just to stop their currency getting too powerful. And the other countries that have done well are countries like Norway, where they've had a lot of oil money, and instead of doing what we did with the oil money, which is pissing up the wall, they put it in a sovereign wealth fund, which they invested now wisely, and so now as a result they own a ton of stuff which is revenue earning, and their sovereign wealth fund is going from strength to strength through good fiscal management, unlike the sort of the Saudi Aramco type wealth funds or the Qatari sovereign wealth funds, which are massive, but they're massive because they've got more money than they know what to do with. They've got so much oil that they've just got, their deposit account is just obscene in terms of the amount of money they've got. So I wouldn't put that down to good financial management. That just comes down to absolute fantastic luck. So basically we've got a constantly depreciating money, and as the money constantly depreciates, you get all these secondary symptoms, and they're secondary. That's what you need to realise. The fact that the schools are underfunded, the NHS is underfunded, apart from a series of spectacular decisions, bad decisions at the in Whitehall, which tends to make things worse. But even if they weren't, we're still going to have progressively less and less money to spend on everything, because we're in a debt spiral. The country's in a debt spiral. Hello. This is a nice empty car park, isn't it? I can get my preferred parking space. So, personally, I blame Mrs. Thatcher. I blame Mrs. Thatcher for two reasons, okay? And I lived through Mrs. Thatcher, so don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. One is that she, the quality of education now is so poor. And what's happened is all those children that were very poorly educated are now in Whitehall and various other positions of power around the country. And because they're poorly educated, they don't have any capacity to analyse things, think logically, understand the consequences of their actions and stuff like that. They're very much sort of got a herd mentality. What do you think we should do? What's being done down the road? All right, then I'll say I'm going to do that. And if anybody asks me why, I should just say because that's what everyone's doing. And also they, she introduced the concept of black is white. She introduced, before Mrs. Thatcher, you could pretty much rely on the government to not necessarily give you the exactly right answer, but make some attempt to tell the truth. Whereas Mrs. Thatcher could look you straight in the face and say black is white. And this is a private school thing. I've learned. We had a few people at dental school who'd been to private schools, Eton, Harrow, that sort of thing, and they're taught as part of their mind melding powers over the common man that to be convincing when they lie. and not to even think of it as lying, just to tell people what to think. And so as a result, you're likely to get a total load of BS whenever you try and get an answer to anything these days. And, you know, they take the mick even on the morning TV when they interview the politicians. They never answer the question. You always get a total load of BS. And the media, you know, too frightened of being excluded, of being shunned from the parliamentary bubble, will just go along with it. You know, they make a token attempt to get at the truth, but they never get there. So I didn't even tell you what the example was of the ridiculous admin thing, but I'll probably record that on the way home and let you know because it does fit in with this story. All right, I'll talk to you in a second. It'll be a couple of hours for me, a couple of seconds for you. One small step for man. Bye.